We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
From ESPN's Pod Center, this is NBA Lockdown.
Welcome into another edition of the NBA Lockdown podcast alongside Amin Elhassan. I'm Jorge Sedano. All right, Amin, we got it. Listen, I don't know about you. I know you were doing True Hoop After Dark last night, and the Warriors were getting beat down. And then all of a sudden, True Hoop After Dark ended. Amin got his eyes on the screen. And it wasn't just Steph Curry and that defense and going small that got in the way of the Pelicans. Apparently, it was a higher power called Amin Elhassan with its focus on that particular game.
Right, so I get done with my After Dark show. And, you know, I was probably midway through the third quarter, turn it on. They're down about 18 or so. Curry hits a couple of threes, and then the Pelicans make a run. It's 20 at the end of the quarter. And I said, pretty much I said, hey, a lot of you people probably think this is over. Harkening back to the Clippers-Warriors game I was at, the one where Chris Paul's ankles were laid to rest. And the Clippers were up in that big in that game, and I said, if you guys think this is over, you obviously have never watched the Warriors play. So, you know, you get all these people giving my mentions. The guy, you know, the one guy from New Orleans who's been kind of beating his chest throughout the first two drubbings, and I keep calling him moral victory guy. So he comes up to me and he's like, looks like you're a moral victory guy today. And all I can do is smile. All I can do is smile because I've seen this movie before. I read the book. I have the comic book, the graphic novel, whatever you want to call it. I know how this ends. And, you know, hey, all I can do is shrug.
Honestly, I watched the whole thing, Amin, and at the conclusion of it, I was like, man, that was awesome to watch, but I still have no idea how that whole thing transpired.
As far as how the comeback happened or how they got
down? Like it's like I watched it and I understand. Like I mean I know what I saw, but in my head I'm like it was hard to compute how all that happened. How they hit those shots, they win small. New Orleans kind of they couldn't get a rebound for God's sake. Right. I mean Golden State. We have the stat here, got 63% of the rebounds there in the fourth quarter. Right. I just couldn't fathom how the perfect storm like that could happen, even after watching it.
I'll give you a better stat. Curry had 5 misses in the fourth quarter. 4 of them were offensive rebounded and turned into points. Turned into 9 points. Of course, the ninth point being that last shot. So it wasn't just that they were killing them they were deadly efficient with their second chances. It's not like one of those things where you can have a 63% offensive rebound percentage because you were tapping it and it just wouldn't go in, and then they get it after 3 or 4 offensive cracks at it. The Warriors got their second chances and they delivered on them. And you know what the funny thing is, George, about that last one? Had his original shot went in, it was going to be a 2-pointer. His foot was on the line. Nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about that.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, Steph Curry was fouled, yes?
Yeah, because they told what Marcus Thompson from the Bay Area publication that escapes me right now. I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm a big fan of you. I just don't know the name of the place where you work. Marcus Thompson has a thing where he said multiple Warriors sources said the refs told them if he had missed the shot, they would have given him the free throw. So they basically said, yes, it was a foul, but we did not want to decide the game on a foul because basically they know if you put Steph Curry on the line for a 4-point play, it's over.
Yeah, it would have been over. And it was Contra Costa Times is who he works for.
Sorry, Marcus.
Yes, that's who he works for. Yeah, it's just unbelievable. So, I mean, look, I was a little surprised at a number of things as far as execution was concerned, though, on the Pelicans side. I thought their execution, obviously, late in the fourth quarter was pretty deplorable, and even in the overtime was pretty deplorable. I know that Monty said after the game that the plan was to foul, but they didn't execute. So then is that his fault because the players didn't listen, or is it the players' fault? I mean, where does the blame, I guess, go? Because we have to assign some blame to somebody here. Look, the Warriors were excellent, and they deserve all the credit. But there should be some blame in the late game execution there.
George, here's what I say the blame lies. All too often we look at that last play and say, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Why did they give up a 20-point lead? That's the question we should be asking. Not why didn't they foul or why didn't they grab a rebound. Why were they in that position to begin with when you're up 20 in the fourth quarter? By the way, you know how many times that's happened in NBA history? In NBA history in the playoffs, where someone was down 20 at the start of the fourth and came back to win. It's happened twice in NBA history. This is number 3. So, put that another tally in the hat, or another feather in the cap of the Warriors, who are getting shut out of every single award, but somehow they keep adding their names to the history books. Okay. But how do you give up a 20-point lead? This is how you give up a 20-point lead. Number 1, you got a guy who's absolutely en fuego in Ryan Anderson. And we don't need to keep playing him. We don't need to keep giving him the ball. That's all right. No, we got all we needed. Number 2, the Warriors did what I've been saying they should be doing since before the series started. There was a point in that game where they said, we know you want to get to Anthony Davis. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. How many times did Draymond Green front the post or three-quarter the post and then come around, knock the ball away, steal it? How many times did the guards get in the passing lanes? How many times did they pressure up? How many turnovers happen like that? How many rush shots did the Pelicans take where Davis didn't even get a touch? All of that is by design. This is why this team is so great defensively. Besides the fact that they're overall the best defense in the league, is that they go through these stretches where they can say, you know what? Not going to happen. You're not going to. I know you want to do this. You're not going to do it. Or if you finally get to the ball to the person you wanted his hands to be in, you're going to have like 5 seconds to make something happen. And so they did that. And then, again, it comes back to, at some point, you got to communicate to the guys on the floor. Guys, shot goes up. Body check somebody. Face guard if you have to. But you can't just, there was a play, I want to say Iguodala brought it up in transition, throws it to the wing. Curry missed the 3. Harrison Barnes comes right up the middle. Offensive rebound, dunk. And the reason why that happens is because Anthony Davis is jogging back up court. And if I'm going to give crap to Kevin Love the other day when he let Jonas Jerebko just go by him like he was freaking Larry Bird, I've got to give crap to Anthony Davis. This is the difference. When I say this is the difference between playoffs and regular season, people get so offended. Like I'm saying, your guy is unclutched, your guy is unworthy. I'm not saying those things. I'm saying when it's your first time in the playoffs, you have tendencies that are not playoff tendencies. In a regular season game, I can take little jogs here and there. I can give up a possession here and there. I can give up a bucket here and there because it's a regular season. More often than not, we'll win this game if we're up 20, and if we don't, big whoop. Tomorrow we'll play somebody else and we'll get it back.
Yeah.
And right there, that's the difference. Anthony Davis hasn't been in the playoffs, so he doesn't know or doesn't have that instinct like, I gotta go testicles to the wall every single possession.
Yeah. Coconuts to the wall every day, every game, every possession. Yes, no question. Just to add to the Warriors and something you pointed out a little while ago, which is the Warriors now are 3-3 this season when they trail at any point during the game by at least 20 points. The rest of the NBA, 12 and 433 in those same situations. With that said, and again, this is according to our friends at ESPN Stats and Info, it's the first time in the shot clock era that the Warriors have won a game in which they trail by at least 20 points entering the fourth quarter. According to Elias, previously in those situations, the Warriors 0 and 358. I mean, that just goes to show you how amazing it is what we just witnessed last night. If you were able to stay up and watch it, hopefully you did.
Well, God bless the West Coast, man, because I was up and I was in. But George, here's the thing: when we say that stat, you got to remember, the Warriors have had some teams now. Chris Webber, Latrell Sprewell, that team, and then obviously the Run TMC, and you talk about the We Believe Warriors. It's those 2 years when the 1 year where they made the playoffs and the year that they didn't, but they won 48 games, missing the playoffs, and then going back to the championship years. Championship year, I should say, or that
Rick
era
Barry,
with Rick Barry. So it's not like they haven't had the opportunity to do this before. They haven't had the firepower. It just goes to show you, I think, And this is an incredible team. And at this point, you know what, George? I want to go on the record. I'm actively rooting for Steph Curry to not win the MVP. And here's why. I want this season to end. The way it's going, to me, it's almost, there's no doubt in my mind that the Warriors are going to win the title. I want them to win the title, and I want everybody to look back and look at all the media people that left Draymond Green off the Defensive Player of the Year ballot, all the media people who left Steve Kerr off the Coach of the Year ballot, all the media people who left, Andre Iguodala off the Sixth Man of the Year ballot, and I want MVP, Steph Curry. I want somebody's ballot out there to say something like Harden, Westbrook, James, because you know it's coming. Because there seems to be this resentment from some people about how good this team is. I'm sorry. It's 67 wins is what happened 9 times in NBA history. 7 of those teams won a championship. At what point are people going to admit that this team is great? I've reached the point where I don't want Curry to win the MVP, just so we can sit back and say how silly everyone was.
Well, I mean, you know what it is, and it is silly. I'm with you 100%. It's we haven't seen them do it before. And, teams need to go through a heartache and get to the conference finals or the finals and lose. And look, man, that's not everybody's path. Not everybody's path is exactly the same. I mean, it's just silly to sit here and say that just because we don't see it regularly or haven't seen it, it doesn't mean they can't do it.
And they've had their heartbreak, right? They could have gone up. Yeah. They could have gone up against the Spurs. Or the Clippers last year when they dealt with injuries, and then the year before that, they could have had the Spurs in a compromising situation, and then Jared Jack blows his defensive coverage, and Ginobili hits a 3, and that's the end of that series, really, because it turns on that trifle. So to say that they have they were the Bucks, they came from 15 wins to come do this. It's a little silly,
Yeah. Speaking of the Bucks, 2 emotions came out of me in that game. One, really excited to see Derrick Rose have another great game because it's now 2 out of the 3 games that he's played in. He's looked like Derrick Rose. So that's very exciting because he's actually getting to the basket, which is something you and I talked about. When he's right, he's getting to the cup and creating all sorts of havoc. But I also felt really bad for the Bucks because I felt like, man, I thought they were going to win that thing. I thought they were going to come back and pull that thing off. Even though that game was like a yo-yo, right? They had the big lead, then they didn't, then they were trailing, and then they came back. And so I felt for them because I really wanted to see them get a win in this series because I think that, as you pointed out, what they've done is incredible too, to a certain extent. Actually, not to a certain extent. What they've done is incredible too. Their turnaround has been fantastic, and it should be noteworthy. So I would like to see them get a win. And after losing that game, I just don't know if they can come back and muster the energy to win another one or to win one.
Their situation is so tough because, again, they're a young team. They're still figuring things out. Many of their players haven't been there either. And that's evidence when you look at their late game possessions to win the game, both at end of overtime and I believe, was it regulation? They had 2 game-winning opportunities where they basically got nothing. Absolutely
right. Chris Middleton took a bad contested shot on one of them. O.J. Mayo took another bad contested. I mean, an even worse contested shot on another one.
But I have to say this, George. I got to say this. It has to be disheartening on some level for that team to play in a crowd that was so damn loud for Chicago. I mean,
I know. But that's how it always is there when they play. When Chicago plays there.
I mean, you want to think that because here's what happens. Let me give you an example. I live in Phoenix. I work for the Suns. Obviously, we played the Lakers a couple of times during my stretch. When we play the Lakers for a regular season game, that's what it sounds like. Because all these people, all these California transplants, all these people who may have decided to take the short hour flight from LA to Phoenix, they come and they go to.
Or they wanted less taxation, and they decided to move to Arizona.
Yeah. We got the transplants. We got a lot of people with California ties, and so the gym gets loud, and it's not necessarily that there are more of them. I would say it's usually 35 to 40%. But usually, if you've made a trip, you're kind of hyped up. You're probably been imbibing a little, so you're going to be rowdier, right? And then the rest of the crowd obviously tries to drown them out, and depending on what happens in the game, you get it. But when we get to the playoffs, George, that dies. So you still have a contingent of Laker fans who will pay whatever it takes to get in the building. But all those Suns fans that usually scalp their tickets because they don't care about a Laker game on a Wednesday night,
they'll be there.
They'll be there for the playoffs. And so to hear that crowd, and here's how I know it wasn't just a loud minority. Because even in inconsequential plays in the middle of the game, when they were down, you would hear the crowd go nuts every time they scored, every time they did anything. And there was no lull. And so, like, for a young team, I don't know if a young team could handle that on their first, maybe game 2 or game 4, they'll figure it out and they'll say, guess what? We just have to deal with it. But when you come out, your first home opener, come on, you're hype, and you hear the intros and everyone's going nuts for them, it takes a little wind out of your sails. That didn't happen in Boston, but it happened in Milwaukee.
Yeah, right. And it's because of the proximity, and it's always happened, just like you said, like in Los Angeles and Phoenix. It's obviously even closer because you're talking about a short drive, actually, from Chicago to Milwaukee, as opposed to you don't even need to get on a plane, So, but yeah, it was wild. Now, I ask you this, and Charles and Kenny and Shaq and Ernie debated this last night. I thought Giannis fouled Derek at the end to get those free throws. I think most of those guys did not. What did you make of that particular play?
I think it was as much of a foul as the foul that Draymond Green fouled out on. So it's like, is it a foul?
No, I disagree. I thought Scott Foster got that really wrong on Draymond Green. There was body contact on Giannis to Derek.
Here's the thing. The Draymond Green foul was a foul. He had 2 hands in the small of his back. He gave him the little nudge. David didn't, to his credit, didn't flop. I mean, it was a very subtle kind of push forward. But, Scott Foster, that dude has some different issues, man. Some of those calls, I don't even want to get into it because I don't like talking about refs. But Scott Foster, you know what you're about. But yeah, I felt like there was sufficient contact to make that call. I felt there was sufficient contact to make that call. And by the way, Derrick Rose almost missed both free throws. Imagine the hot takes this morning.
Well, he would have gotten the Blake treatment, right? Like, that's what would have happened. He would have got, like, I felt like Blake Griffin, who kept them in the game yesterday, or the other night, just got destroyed because of the 2 late turnovers. Now, I get, obviously, that played a factor, but there were a number of things that played a factor in the Clippers' demise. But Derrick would have gotten very similar treatment had he missed both free throws.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to when we're talking about who's to blame for the Pelicans' loss. It goes back to what you said about Blake Griffin. It's the same thing. Like we forget about the other 47 and a half minutes of basketball that happened. Like, why are the Bulls even in this? How did they make this comeback? Doesn't matter. How could he miss those free throws? Like, it's so silly and small-minded.
It's small-minded, simplistic, like it's so dumb. And we do it. And it's like, it's cherry picking is what I call it. It's like, that's all it is. It's just cherry picking a hot take because it's easy and people are going to side with you. Levitard likes to say this about Stugotz because Stugotz is the king of cherry picking hot takes. He says that he does the old Hulk Hogan. Remember when Hulk Hogan used to Hulk out? And he used to like cup his hand to his ear to get parts of the ring so that the audience would cheer him on. That's exactly what that is. Like the people that were getting on Blake Griffin at the end just because of the end, that's what they were doing. They were hulking out, and they were just kind of cupping their hand to their ear to hear the crowd noise because they know that most people will side with them. But anyway, there it is. The real American. There it is. Yeah, I hear you. Let me hear your left side of the ring. Let me hear your right side of the ring. Let me hear your front side, back side of the ring. Come on. I'm going to give you the big leg drop now. Here we go.
George, the funniest part about it is it comes with a flourish. It's not just cupping your ear. You got to go 1, 2, 3 with the hand and then hit the ear.
Well, so that's when he was like in the sleeper hold. When he's in the sleeper hold, he drops the arm once. He drops the arm twice, and then he drops the arm a third time, but it doesn't go all the way down, and then he starts, he's gyrating, and he gives you the no, like Dikembe Mutombo, no. And then he breaks out of it with the elbows, then the clothesline, the leg drop, and then that's when he goes to the crowd after the match. That's how it all worked out. I am a super 80s wrestling dork. There's no question. Anyhow, all right, speaking of superstars, Hulk Hogan was the man who carried wrestling. Right now, LeBron James, the man that carries the NBA. So they beat the Celtics. LeBron was he was phenomenal yesterday. Just deadly from the outside. Obviously, the crazy block on Evan Turner was insane. And look, I get it. The Celtics, you give them some props because they shouldn't be in these games. But you and I both know the difference between the good teams and the average teams, or even the bad teams in this league, are what happens in the last, 6 minutes of a game. And Cleveland has just shown that, they're by far the more talented team. I give the Celtics props, but, I mean, this thing isn't even a contest. Like, I don't even know what we're even talking about when it comes to this series.
I mean, they played hard. We're talking, you know what? This is the thing. There was a dejected Pelicans fan in my mentions yesterday who said something along the lines of, the way I look at it is this is the beginning of something beautiful, and we'll be winning 55 games in no time, and this is just going to be a memory. And I said, you know what? That's really how you have to look at it. If you're the Pelicans, if you're the Bucks, if you're the Celtics, bravo for making the playoffs. Bravo. I don't think anyone picked any of those three teams to make the playoffs. You guys overcame a lot of odds. You did it under trying circumstances, not like you had a cream cheese the whole way. You made it. You're playing a vastly superior team that's been there and done that and has their eyes on a much greater prize than just saying, hey, we're here. So you just kind of have to, take your L like a champ. So they played hard. They stayed in it. They didn't let it get out of hand. Crowder, I thought, made himself a lot more money than he probably was already going to get. Isaiah Thomas has rehabilitated his reputation somewhat. Brad Stevens has the makings of a great coach. Evan Turner's rehabilitated his image a lot. Olynyk, Zeller, Sullinger, these guys are showing that, whoa, you guys may have sold low on us around the draft, but look, we're actually making good. Moral victories all around, man. Take the moral victory, use it, build on it, let's move forward.
All right. Now, speaking of moving forward, before we move forward here to the break, I just want to mention that one of my colleagues, who I love, I am actually a huge fan of, he and I have I wouldn't say we're close friends, but I feel like we have a good mutual respect going back to even before my time at ESPN.
You do his show?
But I love bagging on my boy Colin Cowherd, because I feel like he at times can be the hot take-ity-take king of hot take-ity-takes. Yeah. And today, I'm tuning in, and you want to talk about small sample size theater, and you want to talk about prisoner of the moment. He's going out there starting his show today telling people that this Cavs team is better than any of the LeBron teams with Miami. And I'm like, what? I had to go on Twitter and just gave him a, dude, are you serious? Like a laugh out loud, dude. And then I dug up the Kirk Goldsberry article from Grantland, where he talked about Miami's pace and space offense and what a ridiculous rate they were scoring at offensively. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, look, I get, if you're going to talk about the last season in Miami, okay, that thing didn't go as well. Even defensively, they weren't as good. They were outside the top 10 for the first time in their 4 years there. But look, that Cleveland team is not even close to being the defensive team Miami was. I mean, it's not even in the same stratosphere. Even after the trades, from the trades on, they were only 14th in defensive efficiency. Miami's worst year, I think, as I mentioned, was last year. And I think they were ranked as low as 12. And offensively, I just talked about the record-setting pace they had that Kirk Goldsberry documented and Tom Haberstroh documented many, many times over. I think my man Colin needs to relax. He even went as far as to say that the reason that he didn't think the Heat were that good defensively, even though the numbers would tell you opposite of that, they let Roy Hibbert be awesome against them. Well, they were kind of built a certain way, and you got to give up something. So now that I've got that off my chest, I'll let you just go. I mean.
Well, I'd just like to point out that I have co-hosted the Sedano show, so when the people at the Herd decide that George is never going to guest host the Herd ever again, I'm here. I'm ready. No, obviously, George, you're right, and I think this is something that it's not specific to Colin, although he does have a fiery delivery that gets under people's nerves. But I think most radio hosts that have to cover a bunch of sports, and columnists too, not just radio, but columnists, everybody has their area of expertise, and then every other sport you kind of just gloss over. And so it's just one of those things that I heard, I was like, yeah, Colin's not that big of an NBA guy. There's a Bay Area columnist, I'm not going to name, but you probably can guess who it is. But like earlier during the Warriors season, he would say like these really outlandish remarks. And like everybody else in Warriors Twitter kind of goes along, oh yeah, he's right. And I'm like, why is he right? This guy's waiting for spring training to start. This guy has, he literally pops in and out of basketball. Like, oh, what's happening now? Oh, he had a bad game. I told you. And then he walks away. So, I'm really not perturbed by people whose opinions, because I understand their job.
Oh, no. I'm not mad. I just think it's hilarious. It's like, come on, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, first of all, they're playing Boston and it's the first round. Like, stop.
Well, if you're gonna criticize defense, wouldn't you criticize the Cavs defense that hasn't been able to stop the vaunted Boston Celtics offense? Wouldn't that be a first thing?
Look, my point is this, man. And look, I talk about every sport, okay? And I'll tell you this. And yes, I have an affinity for the NBA. I've also worked on an NBA broadcast. It's a little different. I get that. But my point is this, and I said this during the Masters. I was actually in for Colin that day, the day after the Masters. Jordan Spieth won the Masters, and everybody's like, is he the guy that's going to take over for Tiger? Is he the next Tiger? Is he going to carry the torch? And I'm like, dude, what are we doing? Like, why do we have to do it this way? Like, why can't we just let Jordan Spieth be Jordan Spieth? And just like we were always, and my comment at the time, was we did that with Jordan. Like, at the NBA, everybody we wanted everybody to be the next Jordan. Let these guys be the guys. The Cavs may indeed be better than the Heat in a few years when we see the totality of it, okay? No. And if that's the case, you tip your cap to them. But it may happen. It may happen.
Maybe as this team grows and progresses, yes. This team right now, this year, they can go out and sweep their way.
Absolutely not.
They could sweep their way to a championship. They're still not as good as any of those Heat teams. Not even the last one. Not even the last one. Not even the last one. Let me say that right now. Let me say it clear. This team can go and win a championship this year, and they're still not better than last year's Heat. Because last year's Heat could lock this team down. It's plain and simple. They had the personnel to defend, and they didn't. And, yes, LeBron was worn out after Dwayne Wade kind of wore out and all that, but this Cavs team is a good team, and it might be a championship team, and it may grow into something greater, but right now, I don't see them as a great all-time team, and that's what that Heat team was over the last 4 years. They were a great all-time team.
All right, let's move forward to another great all-time team, and that's the San Antonio Spurs. They're dealing with an injury, obviously, with Tony Parker. We're going to get into that, plus a new candidate for the OKC job, one that I think makes some sense. We'll get into that in 60 seconds on the NBA Lockdown Podcast.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
All right, welcome back to the NBA Lockdown Podcast alongside Amin Elhassan. I'm Jorge Sedano. So, Amin, Tony Parker, we're dealing with this Achilles strain. I know he's dealt with this before during the season, but we've had situations where he's been able to come back and be okay. How concerned are you considering he's questionable for the next game here?
Before I answer that question, I would be amiss if I didn't say, where my dogs at? We right here, dog. Where my dogs at? We right here, dog.
Yeah. Oh! He's not happy down there. I had to bring him back downstairs. We hit the pause button here on the podcast, and he's still barking at something.
Yeah. George, you gotta sometimes let me bark on the track. The Tony Parker thing, it is concerning. It's not. Man, here's the thing with the Spurs. Obviously, they've got enough moving parts where they can kind of mask and make up for his stuff, and I still think they have enough to beat the Clippers because, as I said before, the Clippers are basically a study of can they win 4 games before they run out of gas. Their starting lineup runs out of gas, and we already saw their starting lineup run out of a lot of gas, and now the games are every other day. They don't have much of a chance to catch their breath. So I think they'll get through this round, with him being 50% or even not there. I think what they'll do is they'll do a lot of Corey Joseph with the starting unit to mask his offensive inefficiency, and then Patty Mills comes in off the bench with the bench guys, light it up, and then you close with Patty Mills. We'll see a lot of that moving forward. But yeah, long term, as far as championship hopes, he's got to be out there. They can't. We saw what a hobbled Manu, not even Tony, but a hobbled Manu was like for San Antonio 2 years ago. And
Yeah.
it just wasn't enough to get over the hump. Tony's a much bigger part of their offense than Manu was back then. And so they definitely need him out there if they want to have, champagne dreams this summer.
I'm with you wholeheartedly on that. I think we're certainly in agreement. Now, the other part of this equation when it comes to the Spurs has to do with the OKC job. Now, OKC, this makes sense because of Presti's ties to that organization as well. But according to our Mark Stein, Ettore Messina is a candidate for the Thunder job. What's that? Did I get that right?
Wow. No, you did.
Oh.
I like the flourish.
I was hoping, well, look, Italian, Spanish, it's not that far off. Like, we kind of all, it sounds similar at least. All right, so Messina is widely regarded as Europe's most successful coach, recent vintage alongside our guy David Blatt here. He's long been close with the Spurs organization, dating back to Presti's time under R.C. Buford. Popovich brought Messina in as an assistant coach during the offseason, it says here, and deputized the Italian to serve as interim coach for 2 games in November when Popovich missed some time for personal reasons. Messina also served as an assistant with the Lakers under Mike Brown. This makes sense to me, even though he's a relative unknown in some circles, and the common fan probably doesn't know. It makes sense because what's been our biggest criticism of Oklahoma City? The offense, right? Well, here's a guy that comes from what we regard arguably one of the best offense basically in the last few years. And it's from San Antonio. So in that regard, it makes some sense. But does it make sense to bring someone in like that who may not have a relationship with Durant or Westbrook? How do you view that?
Here's how I view it. From an X's and O's standpoint, I think he'd be a fine pick because, he is a creative offensive mind. He's one of the best coaches in Europe. And unlike David Blatt, he has paid his dues, quote unquote, in the NBA, not just here in San Antonio, but he was also an assistant coach with the Los Angeles Lakers a couple years ago as well. So it's a lot easier to accept someone like that to be your head guy than someone like Blatt who's just like literally, this is all new to me. What's it, 48 minutes?
Right. This guy's been in the league for a little bit. Yeah, exactly.
Now, on the other hand, I think when you're looking at a team like Oklahoma City, the object is to win now. And you want a guy who's been a head coach, and who kind of knows the rigmarole. And in that sense, I still don't get why Oklahoma City is chasing all these outside the box candidates. I feel like they just want to prove how smart they are. Oh, they're so smart. Everyone was saying you should hire him, and then we plucked this little known guy from here. Like this is not the time. You get cute. You get cute when you're rebuilding. Boston, get cute. Go get Brad Stevens, and it worked out great. He had a kind of an up and down first year, and now in his second year, he's really found his footing. You get cute if you're Cleveland at the time, because like Kyrie Irving and Tristan Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, we'll go get this guy from Europe who can grow with them. You don't get cute when the championship window is now, and that's my thing. Again, you look at, and I've said this on this podcast on the radio. We wrote an NBA front office insider piece for today for Insider about this. You look at the Thunder's offensive issues, and you say, where does that look familiar? And you say, oh, yeah, that's right. Golden State had this issue last year. They had offensive issues. They got a new coach from the staff, and now look at them. They're free, and they've blown past whatever their ceiling was before. And so you say, could we get someone like that? Is there anyone on that staff who perhaps has some head coaching experience, who is also known as an offensive mind? Who could bring some of that good mojo that release us from the bonds of ISO ball and hero ball. Is there anyone there who'd be available to do that? Oh, yeah, there's a guy named Alvin Gentry. Well, what's his resume? Well, he was with the Clippers last year, and they were a pretty great offense. Okay, well, what did he do before that? Has he ever head coached? Well, when he was the head coach of the Phoenix Suns, they went to the conference finals, and they had the 4th highest offensive rating of all time. The 4th highest offensive rating of all time. Behind only the 87 Lakers and I think the 88 Celtics and the third team escapes me right now. But basically, yes, here's a dude who has head coaching experience, who has great respect around the league, who has San Antonio ties, who is an offensive genius, and that's kind of what we need. Someone who can come in and get people to buy in immediately. Because when Alvin comes in, you don't have this well, is he going to get the respect of Durant? No, that comes in naturally. Alvin's the type of guy, I said this on the show last night. Alvin's the type of guy that he could walk into a room with people who never watched basketball, never heard of the NBA, and within 5 minutes he'll find a common ground with them, something, and they'll be best friends. Whether it was a movie that they both saw and liked, whether it was a type of food that they both liked, whether it was a vacation spot, whether it's a song on the radio, something, Alvin Gentry finds a way to connect with you. He is the most incredible people person I've ever been around. And so, when you look at all those check boxes that you're looking for Oklahoma City, I don't understand why Alvin Gentry's name isn't number one on their list. And instead, they're looking at Billy Donovan.
Yeah, the Billy Donovan we've talked about here a bunch already over the last couple of weeks. I don't understand that one at all. I thought it makes some sense, but yeah, again, I'm more about I'm more in line with you, which is I question whether a guy who's never been a head coach in the NBA is the guy you want in this particular situation when Durant's going to be a free agent, Russ is going to be a free agent the year after that. There's a lot riding on this one particular season. I just don't know if that makes sense right now. And look, Gentry makes sense. Hell, why isn't Mike D'Antoni a candidate? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Mike, this is definitely me speaking with a huge bias. I look at Mike and I think to myself, what if I would tell Mike, you want to take a job that the expectations aren't championship or bust, because right now his rep has taken such a huge hit, and I know you don't want to pass up the chance to coach great talent, but he kind of has the scarlet letter on him. So if I were Mike D'Antoni, I would take a job like if it were to open the Washington job, something like that. If it were to open the New Orleans job, because those are the jobs where it's like, okay, expectation, we just need to be better than what we've been, and you can come in and take that team from 40 some odd wins to 55 wins. And maybe a division title or so, and people will be like, wow, oh, maybe he isn't as bad as we thought. Oh, that's right. They remember all the great things about Mike. If he goes to Oklahoma City and they win 68 games, 69, 70 games, and they lose,
and they don't win the championship.
It's like, oh, I told you Mike D'Antoni can't coach. Like, I don't know how many more times the guy can
He's in that danger zone. Yeah.
So even though it's not his fault that the Lakers and the Knicks were awful abominations. But the other thing also is this is the difference between Alvin and Mike. Mike is truly a savant when it comes to the offensive play calling and all that. But I would say that Alvin is a savant with the people skills, with the communication. And that's something that Mike hasn't always been great at. He's great at talking to guys number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 kind of, and then 6. And as you go further down that roster, he doesn't have much of a relationship with those guys. And I don't think that's unique to Mike. I think there are a lot of coaches in this league, successful coaches in this league, who are like that. I think Alvin's the type of guy who can engage the 15th guy. And I think that's what Oklahoma City needs. They need someone who can get the most out of this roster, not just the most out of Durant and Westbrook.
Last thing here we want to get to, Izzy and I didn't get a chance to get to it yesterday, but on Wednesday night, Mark Stein also tweeted, late night with Mark Stein. You keep hearing Spurs and Mavs plan to be at the front of the line for Big D native LaMarcus Aldridge in free agency. Obviously, we know Lakers and Knicks will be involved as well. Blazers have work cut out to hang on to him. Look, man, the Blazers are running through a situation where Damian's not playing very well. They're dealing with so many injuries. LaMarcus is really the one guy that they can count on right now. Do you wonder if LaMarcus thinking that the grass is greener on the other side is something he should be afraid of maybe a little bit and not be so steadfast, ready to jump ship? Or do you think that Portland team has kind of peaked and he could jump on one of those teams, maybe the Mavs or the Spurs, obviously, and just kind of steamroll and help them steamroll through their side of the bracket eventually, in years, in the subsequent years?
This is where I say yes. Here's the problem. On the one hand, is there a ceiling to Portland? Yes, but not because this team is as good as it's going to get. It's because of the massive free agency concerns. Robin Lopez is a free agent. LaMarcus Aldridge is a free agent. Wesley Matthews is a free agent. Steve Blake has a player option. Aaron Aflalo has a player option. So just by virtue of like, yo, this is the NBA, guys opt out and guys become free agents, guys go elsewhere, this may be the end of the Blazers as we know it. And which is pretty sad because last year they had a great starting five and no bench. This year they have a great bench and the starting five all got hurt at one point or another. So in that sense, yeah, sure, maybe this is his chance to escape. On the other hand, I think what LaMarcus Aldridge is seeking, you ain't going to find it anywhere else, man. LaMarcus Aldridge wants what Deron Williams wanted. And I think what he's going to find out is that Deron Williams is miserable and probably wishes he had stayed in Utah. LaMarcus Aldridge thinks, if I go somewhere else, I'll do this, this, and that. I'll be a bigger star. I'll have more Foot Locker ads, whatever it is he's looking for. Recognition, MVP ballots. I don't know what he's looking for. But if he thinks that it's whatever he's looking for is not in Portland, he's in for a very, very rude awakening. Even if he goes to the Spurs, he may have success from a team standpoint. But I think
but individually, he's not going to be recognized the same way.
He's going to get way less credit, way less credit than he's getting right now. And I don't know if he'll be happy with that. Because if it's about winning and just winning, then I would stick it out in Portland because, as I said, they've got a pretty good thing going. You know, if they can get everyone back. And I've named all those free agents, but let's be honest. A lot of them are going to be waiting to see what LaMarcus does.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think he goes to Los Angeles or New York, but I do think it's between those two Texas teams. If he goes somewhere else, I think that those are the two teams that would be the front runners for his services outside of Portland. But yeah, I just would be careful about the grass being greener on the other side because it just depends on, as you pointed out, what it is that motivates you and makes you happy. And he's got it good. You don't realize sometimes how good you got it, like Deron. I mean, Deron ran off Jerry Sloan, man. And Jerry Sloan may have been the best thing for Deron because his value was never higher than when he was running that system with Jerry Sloan. And we haven't seen that guy. Now, granted, with Deron, I think we talked about this, you and I, the other day. Some of it is injuries. Some of it is just erosion of skills. And some of it is, the system. So I think it's just a bad combination. Where I think LaMarcus is a little more bulletproof in that regard because of the way he's used. Like most teams are basically going to use him the same way. But in San Antonio, yes, they're going to spread the wealth around. But let me ask you this: if they bring in LaMarcus, does that mean like Duncan? That's it? Like we're calling it a swan? Like, this is the swan song, or this is the farewell tour? I mean, we're just speculating here, but would that mean that, or do you think that those two guys could play together? Like, how does that work?
No, absolutely. I look at it and say, okay, so Tim Duncan's a free agent. He just basically said, okay, how much does it cost us to get LaMarcus Aldridge? Go ahead and do that. All right, now you can sign.
And then he just comes in for like the mid-level or something,
or minimum room mid-level, whatever it is. Like, it's obvious the dude's made more money than he knows what to do with. He enjoys playing for this team. He's not Kobe.
He doesn't spend it on clothes because he dresses like a guy who's like in a Seattle grunge concert still. Like it's like the 90s never left. Like he's still dressing like he's in the 90s.
No, hold on. No, he's he got a new girl and she got him dressing a little nicer.
Yeah, I agree with you because last year those finals, man, he was wearing like straight up Eddie Vedder Pearl Jam flannels still.
Yeah, he's and the Fat Farm. He's the only guy who still buys Fat Farm. I didn't even know
really?
Fat Farm was still.
I saw some flannels the last couple of years too. So that reminded me of the Seattle grunge, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden type days.
But so it's not he's also not the type of guy like I said like Kobe who wants to quote unquote strike a stand for labor. Like they want us to take discounts, but we earn this money. Yeah. By the way, I'll be representing the team at the lottery. What?
Right.
So he does not. I don't think he cares about taking minimum if it means, hey, can we get more rings? Can we continue this thing going? Because he's got 5. If they don't win this year, can we get 6? So at least I can say I had more than anyone else in my era. So I could say I had as many as Jordan. If LaMarcus signs like a 3-year deal, can I get a 2-year deal? Or maybe 1 and a player option and see, okay, maybe we can get 7. Maybe we get 8.
Right.
Maybe if people will look at Tim Duncan as this incredibly kind of like docile guy. He is one of the fieriest competitors, most fiery competitors that we've had in the history of the game. It's just because he has the Duncan face, kind of hides a lot of that. And so I think if there's an opportunity for him to add multiple rings, and the cost is, hey, instead of making the arbitrary number that we're going to decide to pay you anyway, because how'd they get to 10 and 10.5 and things like that, we'll pay you minimum. And they're like, cool.
Yeah, it's funny. He really is. I mean, when he misses a shot, man, like, that he knows he should have had, like, just watch him. Because you just look at his body, like, he slaps himself in the head. Like, he's really competitive when it comes to stuff. I don't think people realize that. You're right, because generally we think of him having this kind of cool, calm demeanor. But yeah, he's a little feisty, that's for sure. But
by the way,
that'll do it for us here. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, one last thing. I just want to circle back to that Alvin Gentry thing. I just want to point out there's a follower on Twitter. His name is Andrew Bassan. I don't know if this is complete coincidence or maybe he heard me talk about this elsewhere, but he said, Amin nailed the last part 3 weeks ago. I saw Coach Gentry picking up lunch in Oakland. He was dapping people up and telling this woman who didn't know who he was how good the cookies at the shop are. That was the first time I'd seen him impression made. That's the kind of guy Alvin Gentry is.
Yeah, I think it makes some sense. I think it makes some sense, too. So, all right, man. What, you got anything else? One more thing? Anything else? A little PS or no? You good? No postscript?
Before we leave, are we going to see sweeps this
How many
weekend?
sweeps?
Yeah.
I think Chicago now. I would have thought Milwaukee. I had Milwaukee getting one. I thought it was last night. But, yeah, I think Chicago sweeps. I think Atlanta sweeps. I think the Cavs sweep. Who else are we missing here?
The Warriors. Warriors are going to sweep.
Yeah.
They'll sweep. You think so?
Yeah.
Okay, so then on Sunday we'll have Raptors Wizards. Obviously, Game 3 is tonight on our network. But if the Wizards, do you see the Wizards winning this one and then ending it on Sunday? Both games at home.
I gotta think like Toronto gets one. You know, like I do. I gotta think Toronto gets one, even if it's on the road. I still think they get one. We the North. Hashtag.
Yeah. See, I'm abandoning ship. I already apologized to Wizards fans. I said I picked against you guys last year in the first round. I messed up. I did it again. Raptors. I've never ever given them credit, and I started, and I regret starting now. Rockets, Mavs.
In all my picks, in all my picks, the only one I had, it looks like I'm going to regret is you. I had you sway me when we were on together, you and me and Jeff Goodman, and you swayed me to Dallas for some reason, even though I was all in on Houston. Like I was like defiantly saying that Houston was going to just maul them, and then you convinced me that Dallas could be in the series, and then I slipped.
They got 2 games in Dallas coming up. They got there's a lot of time. Let me ask you: do you think Dallas is gone fishing on Sunday? They have Game 3 tonight on ESPN, but Game 4 is on Sunday.
I think they could get one.
Okay. So Jorge Sedano says Pelicans pack light, Bucks pack light, and Celtics pack light.
Celtics. Well, Celtics, they can just stay home. They don't have to pack.
They're all staying home, yeah. Oh, they're all staying home. I take that back.
So and Brooklyn too. Brooklyn can just stay home at that point. Yeah. Pelicans can stay home. Yeah. So yeah, the only pick that I made that is going to come back to bite me is I let you convince me that the Mavericks could win that series. But yeah. All right, we'll see. Maybe you're right. Maybe you'll still be right, and I'll be apologizing to you again for just.
Hey, look, I'm already getting my back pedal ready. If Dirk plays like he did in the last game, I'll wave that white flag. I'll take all the abuse. I'll take all the abuse.
You called him a statue on my radio show about 17 times.
Jeez, man.
Couldn't even call him by name.
Hate hard.
Couldn't even say his name. It was awful. Isn't what you did to him.
Is Venus de Milo the one that doesn't have arms? Yeah, that would be what Dirk was on defense. And go right by him and can't even contest.
All right. On that note, that'll do it for us. For Amin Elhassan, I'm Jorge Sedano. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for listening to NBA Lockdown on ESPN Radio. For more great podcasts, check out the Pod Center page on ESPNradio.com.